Until you can think in English, you won't truly become fluent. Do you translate from your native language into English while you're speaking or conversing? It slows you down. It creates unnatural pauses and increases your stress levels while you're speaking because you panic when you realize you're taking too long to translate words in your head. All of this stops you from communicating easily and naturally in English. So today, I want to share some simple exercises and techniques to train your brain to think in English. Welcome back again, friends. We are passionate about helping women to speak up and say yes to more new opportunities as English speakers. You can find out more about us by watching our other English learning tips. Thinking in English is so related and connected to feeling fluent in English, being able to speak without pause or hesitation, just to have the words ready on the tip of your tongue. So how do you get from where you are right now to that magical place? How can you train your brain to think in English? One of the core principles of learning to think in English is to immerse yourself consistently, and that makes sense. You surround yourself with the language that you're learning as much as possible. If you haven't already made the switch to English-speaking news, start there. Learn the lyrics to English songs and listen or sing to them as much as you can. Watch movies or TV shows if that's your thing, or read books, or listen to audiobooks or podcasts. While you're doing any of these things, you're hearing words and useful grammatical structures in context, which helps you to understand how they're used in real-life situations. This makes it easier for you to recall them when you need to use them in your thoughts or your conversations. I recommend allocating about 30 minutes every day to immersing yourself in English. The wonderful thing about doing it daily is that the results compound over time. You'll reach your goal of thinking in English much faster if you practice every day, rather than practicing for 5 hours once a fortnight. That's because you are progressively building on what you did the day before. Think about when you go to the gym and work out. You feel good, right? But if you don't go again for 2 whole weeks, your muscles and stamina revert. They start to go backward. So the next time that you're there, you're actually just building up the strength that you lost during that period when you weren't working out. But if you keep working out every day, you're going to be progressively building that lasting strength and muscle, right? It's the same with your English training. Now, listening and immersion are so good. You can walk around all day, every day, receiving English through your headphones, right? That exposure to the language is great, but to train your brain to think in English, you need to work a little bit harder. You need to activate the ideas, the language, and the grammatical structures in your mind so that you can easily access them while you're thinking in English. You need to keep that language super active. Now, I've got a few specific exercises that you can do to train your brain to think in English. I've designed these activities to be short and manageable. You'll be able to do these tasks in 30 minutes or less each day. Let's use a podcast as the source. 6-Minute English is fantastic because its episodes are short and sweet, and they're focused on a clear, specific context. Before you press play, spend 60 seconds brainstorming words and ideas that you already know about the podcast topic. The trick here is not to translate. If you catch yourself trying to translate a word from your native language into English, stop and move on. Just write down the English words that come to you. Then you're going to play the episode through. Now, I really want you to give your full focus to the episode while you're doing this activity. That's why the 6-minute episodes are great. They're short and sweet. Once you finish listening, use an ideas map to quickly record the story or the main ideas from the podcast in English. Do this straight after you finish listening and intentionally focus on recalling the words and ideas in English. It doesn't need to be in any particular order. Just write down what you recall from the episode as soon as those things pop into your mind. What's great about this is that you're making neurological connections between the language that you've just been listening to and the English words that you need to talk about the topic or share these ideas again. To take it one step further, meet with your speaking partner to discuss the podcast episode. The more you practice doing it, the easier it becomes to think in the language, to think in English. More and more opportunities to activate English words, ideas, and thoughts in your mind give you more power. Let me give you another exercise to try. This time we're going to use a YouTube video as the source. We're going to use one of the recommended resources inside the platform, a video about the fast fashion industry. Before we do anything else, we're just going to watch the first 1 minute of the video without the sound on. We're going to use this video to prompt your brain to think in English because there's a lot of visual imagery related to this topic. Make sure you have a piece of paper in front of you so that you can write down what you see, or you don't need to write it down. You could say it out loud or even just think them in English. That's okay. Choose any podcast or movie video. The images move really quickly, so slow down the playback speed to 0.5 just to allow your brain a bit more time, a natural amount of time to react. Watch the first full minute of the video. If there were some things that you saw on the screen as you were watching but you couldn't quite think of the word in English, take a moment to look them up once you finish that first minute. Try to avoid translating directly from your language. Instead, search for the word in English. This will help you keep your brain in English and connect other words or ideas to the vocabulary that you're trying to lock into your brain. Then, if you have time, watch the video again and complete the same activity because the second time, you're going to see those words that you didn't have in your mind before. That prompt on the screen is going to help you quickly retrieve the word that you know, strengthening that neurological pathway. There are so many things that you can do to practice like this on your own or with your speaking partner or study group to help reinforce those words and bring them to your thoughts. The more you repeat and hone a specific topic, the stronger you make those pathways in your brain, and the easier it's going to be to think in English. The next strategy to train your brain to think in English is to engage in English conversations and actually speak. Although you might be nervous, although you might be anxious, practice speaking as much as possible because it's in these real conversations that you're forced to think on your feet and respond really quickly in English. This activity is made much easier if what you were doing in the previous exercises is actually what you are talking about as well, so that the ideas, the vocabulary, and everything you need are connected. Finally, you can train your brain to think in English by setting a fixed amount of time, just 5 minutes. You can set a timer and simply describe what is happening around you in the world. If you're on a walk, on the bus, or in your office, the best thing about this activity is you can do it anytime, anywhere. During that time, your only task is to mentally focus on pulling your brain away from your native language and towards English. Describe the world around you, narrate your actions and what you're doing, and express your thoughts or your opinions about what's happening around you in that moment. Start with words, then build up to simple sentences about actions and gradually increase the complexity. You can shift some of the tenses you're using, talk about what happened at the same time yesterday, or what you hope will happen in the future. The short time frame here is really important. It can be even less because this activity is really exhausting. Don't push it too far so that it becomes unfun or boring. This skill, like flexibility, gradually builds up over time and becomes easier if you do it regularly. So just make a habit of it. Consistency is so important, so make sure you set aside a dedicated amount of time each day to engage in English and complete one of these exercises. I recommend using a podcast series or an audiobook, and I've left a podcast channel down in the description. I'm recommending these things because you can keep coming back to the same place to get those materials, the next episode, or the next chapter. Stay motivated, keep practicing, and eventually, thinking in English is going to become second nature for you. I'll see you in the next video.